Hi guys, welcome to the Improvement Season podcast. It is me, Steve Hall, and on the other side is Pascal Floor. How's it going, Pascal?
Yeah, it's good.
You haven't got
It's
ants
just good.
crawling over your body.
And not today. I was actually, so I did a genocide yesterday, which was, it didn't feel that bad, even though that I cried online. So on the social media, Instagram stories. But this was just show. Actually, deep inside, I really did enjoy every single minute. And it wasn't even a minute. It was just every single second of it when I just killed all of those ants. What are they called, by the way, Steve?
They're like midgies or something.
Midgies.
Something like that.
So in Germany they are called Gewittertierchen, and there was even someone who told me how they are called in French. I could look it up, but I don't even bother now. But it is basically directly translated in Beasts of Thunder, which was actually quite badass, right?
That is badass.
That should be the name on English. Yeah, Beasts of Thunder. They were all over my body, and then I realized that they are sitting all across the window, and then the war just broke loose, and I went after them with a deodorant and a fire. And then Morgan, who's one of my clients, he's a firefighter. And he commented on my Instagram stories that he's not pleased seeing what I'm doing there at home. So
I bet.
Yeah.
I saw you doing that and I was like, that's like what people would do at school with like Bunsen. Actually, no, they would literally do the using a lighter and then a deodorant and then flame throwing. I've never done it before. I was just like, I was nervous for you.
No, I done it before. So disgusting story. So my first flat was together with 3 other mates of mine back when I was 16 years old. And these 3 other guys were just like the typical potheads, like stoned all day long, didn't take care of anything in the household, and I was just like not giving a fuck cleaning their mess up after them, especially in the kitchen. And then there were like just so many fruit flies flying all over the place in the kitchen, and every single time you moved something, there was just like that black shadow rising, right? And that was just like a bunch of fruit flies. And that was the moment I used that for the first time and went after all of the fruit flies with a deodorant and a fire. And it worked. But the kitchen was also a little bit bigger and I didn't have to spray against a window or so. It was just like they were sitting on, I don't know, a stove or so, right? And then I just killed all of them.
I've used Raid before. Do you have Raid?
I heard of that, but never used it myself. I'm a little bit, I don't know, scary of using toxic stuff like that.
You would just use a flamethrower instead.
Yeah, kind of. I mean, fire got us, got our society where we are now today, right? I mean, they're the caveman.
So, where were we going? I have no idea. That just completely went off tangent. Yeah. But regardless, I'm going to actually, before I ask the question, I'm going to go into how was your week? How's everything going? You're in week 4, right? You're not deloading yet?
No, absolutely. And it's funny. I thought about it here today when I came back from the training session and went out for a walk. That last mesocycle, I told you that I had to call it a day a little bit earlier than planned. This mesocycle, I'm on week 4, and I'm considering actually extending it to a 5th week. So it just goes to show how much of a difference your environment, your stress situation, and also just like the adaptation process can make. I did the same amount of volume, if not even a little bit more. I would have to look it up. I even think that I did a little bit more throughout this mesocycle. And this time I recovered just fine. And possibly also because I wasn't... So the last time we were anticipating and planning everything for the London seminar, which was... It always takes a little bit of toll on me, especially like the traveling thing and all that kind of stuff. So that was just a little bit stressful, making that happen and also hoping that everything is going down well. It's just like elevated or chronic stress all the time. And this time around, nothing was super stressful in my life, and you can just see that you did a certain amount of stressor or stimulus to your body, and all of a sudden you were adapting to that, right? And I did kind of the same mesocycle in the previous one, had to cut it short, and this time did the same one again with a little bit more volume and recovered just fine. And now I'm even considering extending it to a week 5. So yeah, it's just funny to see how the body sometimes works, and also just a good lesson for other people to hear and see that not every mesocycle is going to be fantastic or great, even if you hope that it's going to be that way. Sometimes it's also absolutely fine to cut it short. If by that you are recovering then just fine, and you set yourself up for a successful next mesocycle. Because now, looking back in hindsight, if I'm then able to pull it off with 5 weeks, I kind of make up for the lost week in that previous mesocycle. And then we are back to normal, right? And maybe I'm even getting more out of this mesocycle or this setup, because the last mesocycle was just, my fatigue was so high that probably a week 4 could have crushed me or would have not been productive at all. And now this time it's just like I'm listening to my body and listening to what he's capable of doing. And this is where auto-regulation also comes into play. And this is where we go always talking or referring to smart training. I don't know if I really like that term, because what's really smart about just listening to your body? It's just, actually, it should always just be the norm instead of calling it smart.
No, I see that. And it's always funny because it's the whole planned deload versus auto-regulated deload. And it's kind of like, well, just an element of both I think is a good idea. Like, plan to have a deload at a certain time point potentially, and then if you're feeling good, you feel like you can overload for another week, then have at it. Why not? For some people, that especially at your level of advancement, go for it. Like, that's a good idea. So, and then, like you said, it's a great example of just how lifestyle can impact. Like, it's giving you a whole extra week of training probably. So that's really exciting.
Yeah, and I'm back to training at my old gym. So I really committed to actually riding my bike to that old gym. It's a little bit longer way than the last gym I've been training at, but I just love that environment. So I was always, back in the days, kind of complaining about the gym that, yeah, it isn't the greatest, stuff like that. But then I trained at a different gym for a year, and I started to appreciate my old one where I just trained for 6 years, right? And now I'm just like, okay, shit, I have to get there and train there, because my training is just so much more effective there. And I just much more enjoy hanging around there and spending time there. It isn't sitting in the back of my neck and being like, shit, I want to get home as quickly as I can, so let's just get that session over with. It's more like, okay, let's go in there, let's train. And if it takes me, I don't know, 1.5 hours, then I spend here 1.5 hours, right? If it takes me a little bit less time, it's all right. If it takes me even a little bit longer, which is hardly ever the case, then it's all absolutely fine as well. And this is, I think it's so important. What just made me realize how important it is to be in an environment training-wise where you're spending like 6 days a week that you also enjoy and like, because that will definitely play into that.
Yeah, I was just going to say, this is obviously an argument a lot of people make, is like your environment in your gym makes a huge difference. Yeah. And sometimes people look at me training in a commercial gym and they're like, how can you train in a commercial gym? Surely that affects your gains. And then my mindset is just like, well, I put my headphones on, I go into the gym and I just do my work. I don't think a different gym would make that much difference, but it might be my lack of going into some. But I'd love to hear, because obviously I think you think probably more similar to me, but obviously it's made a difference for you. So I'd love to hear the differences between the two.
So it isn't really the gym for itself, because it's the same chain. However, the train or the gym I'm working out in right now has a little bit of a different setup. It's under a different name. It's John Reed Fitness, but it is a sub-brand of the entire company of McFit. So McFit is basically that huge chain who has gyms across entire Europe, and they are even trying to expand now to the US, which would be quite interesting and cool, because then for me as a member, I could actually then train in their gyms. It's basically like a Gold Gym. I know that Gold Gym has also like places in Tokyo, for example, But
Anytime Fitness as well does that.
But McFit has just a really, really good standard for a pretty low price, which is really cool. But anyway, what I wanted to say is it's coming from the different brand. Thing is, though, that the gym I was working out at for the last year, the people there just pissed me off big time. And I'm someone who doesn't really give a fuck about the environment because I'm doing my stuff. But when they are going into my kind of territory, right, into my zone, and being just like super annoying, that is where I start to have a problem with it. And it's not just like, so I don't have a problem with sharing a machine or something like that. It's not about that, but more so the political views of those kind of people. It was a bunch of like mid 40 to 50-year-old guys, like in the extremely right-wing camp. And I'm kind of a liberal where I'm saying like, okay, everyone is happy to do their stuff, right, as long as they are not harming anyone else with that. But when it comes to something like extremism, no matter whether it is left wing or right wing, when they are then putting it out there and impacting even me, right, with their behavior and shouting racism stuff in the gym like early in the morning, and I'm the only one who's like, what the fuck is wrong with you guys? And they are just a bunch of people wanking off each other, right, and even pushing them, and pushing and kind of but pushing themselves, right? Someone's saying something, and because of that, the other one feels the obligation to also then say something even harder or more, right? Where it's just like, I don't want to train in an environment with just fucking idiots like that, right? And this is where I was then always like coming into the gym, having a little bit of a grim face when they were again around, because it didn't only happen like once. And also at the same time, it wasn't just like the political views they had and carried out openly or publicly, but it was also like how they treated other people that weren't in their group, which I was part in as well. So I wasn't part in their group as well. And they made me feel that, right? Which was just like, and I'm self-confident enough to just be like, what the fuck, guys? You're just a bunch of losers, right? But other people will probably have a really negative experience with that, right? And especially like, just consider people who are maybe from a foreign country training there, how they must feel when there's a bunch of guys around who are like that. Right, and this is where I just had that massive issue of training in that gym, when there are a bunch of guys who are like that, who are thinking that the gym is their place, their area where they can, I don't know, be who they really are, or be that group who they are. I don't know. It was just like super annoying, and that's why I'm super happy to be back in that old gym, because I know that this isn't the case there. It's in the midst of Berlin, so it's just like a lot of diversity, and no one is actually doing something like that. And if there are some groups, then it's just like a bunch of friends, and it's just like a bunch of dickheads carrying out right-wing paroles or so.
So, okay, I get that. That means it's more of I'd say that's an outlier in that it's just like a terrible gym experience. It's not like, oh, this gym's better because that gym's, don't know, boring or whatever it might be.
It's just uncomfortable being around a group like this, right? If it's just a group that also gives you the feeling that you are not welcomed in the gym because that is their territory, right? And if you're not part of our group, then you better make sure to not train at our times. So it's just like not really cool. And I could have just stayed there and be like, I don't care what you guys think, but at the same time, it was always at the back of my neck where it's just like, I don't want to be around that when there are guys like this who think that they are the strongest and the guys in the gym, right?
Yeah, because I have people in my gym who they might not be the like brightest, or they do some stuff that I'm just like, I don't know, all the weights on the leg press and going down not very far, but I mean, they're nice. Like I remember literally the other day, I took a plate off because he had all the 20s on there. I took a plate off to use, and then I saw him come over, and I was like, oh, no, I'll put it back. He was like, no, it's fine. I'll go get another one. I put it back, and he brought me another one. And I was just like, okay, I don't agree with your training protocol, but you're a nice guy. Like, he puts away his plates when he's finished.
Totally.
So, I get, it's an extreme position. So I'm glad you're in a better gym now.
Yeah, no, totally. And I agree with you on that one. I mean, I have to give it to them. They kept the place clean. So they had a gym culture of like, this is our place and you better keep it clean and put away your weights again, which is definitely not the case at the gym where I'm training at right now. The weights are just all over the place. But I mean, it's just nicer to be around there, because I would say that, I don't know if that's truly the case, but there are just people who are more so like-minded, and who don't give you the feeling that they don't want you to be around there, but it's more like, okay, this is an open gym, anyone can come here, right? Whereas the other one was just like, it felt like a private gym,
right? Which
wasn't really. Right? If you had a membership, you're more than welcome to be around there. But they treated it as such because, especially at the time I was training, it was 5 a.m. There were just these guys and me around. And that was every single morning. Right? So, yeah. But anyway.
It's funny you say that, the private gym experience, because I think I've been to some gyms where it feels like that, and it's actually not comfortable. Even though I maybe fit in with that environment, maybe it's like a bit of a bodybuilding gym, I still don't feel comfortable because I'm not part of it. So I only imagine, what comes to my mind immediately is like females in general. Like I'm not surprised they try and maybe go at particular times or whatever it might be, a particular zone.
Just to female only studios.
Yeah.
You can totally see that. Especially when there are so many creeps around that are just hitting on the girls.
Yeah.
I've seen it a couple of times, and it never came to my mind of just like going to someone and hitting on them. I mean, I'm not in the fitness studio to hit on girls. And I don't think that they are there to actually be hit upon.
No, not most of the time, at least.
No.
I'm going to introduce, I might as well ask you the question now. There's a question I said to Pascal, I was going to ask him, and I thought you guys would be interested in this as well. Because basically, I've got this conundrum. For my physique, I have not a small waist, but I also don't have well-developed abs. And the common nomenclature is, when you train your abs, yes, you can make them thicker, but you also make your waist larger. I was trying to gather my head around this because I'm thinking, if I'm doing ab flexion and I'm building up that area of my abdominals, why is that making my waist kind of wider from like a front on standpoint? Why would that impact my V-tape or anything like that? I don't know if I wasn't seeing something, because part of me was like, ab training sucks. So why would I want to do that and make my waist wider potentially, but I do need my abs thicker? And I was kind of like going back and forth in my own head. I don't know if you had any insights on that, whether you think from the front, does it make it thicker if you're training not the obliques and like you're not doing twists, you're just training the front musculature? Is that making your waist thicker from the front to back?
So I was always struggling with the thing or the belief of direct ab training making your midsection just like wider. And I know that Mike and James are people who are talking about that. And I'm still not convinced that this is actually the case. So while I think that when you're training the abs and even ab flexion, probably there's still a high activation of the obliques there, or relatively high activation of the obliques. Of course, it's a kind of different thing if you're training the obliques directly. But I would assume that it's probably not going to be the case. And just think about it, right? How much would you need to train your midsection to actually make your midsection wider? Just think about also the width of your shoulder girth, for example. Just making that one wider. How hard is it to actually widen a body part? Or just like the bicep girth measurement or so, right? Getting 1 centimeter there is just already like a super painful thing to do. Sure, we have the midsection, we have the erectors, when they are increasing in size as well. But this is the same thing when it comes to the biceps and the triceps as well, right? You're not just training the biceps and hoping that or just you're surprised when the arm is getting bigger that you would expect that the bicep was the only thing that was growing. No, you also, of course, have the triceps involved that is then aiding into the size. So I would assume that training the abs directly, I really do have a hard time thinking that it would contribute to a large midsection, unless probably you're on drugs that also then possibly contributes to a little bit more of a gut extension, while at the same time the muscle growth is just like so rapidly increased that just the sheer amount of training the abs directly makes them blow up. But I think for a natural, when you're putting a little bit of direct work to the abs, seeing a huge increment in the circumference measurements around the midsection, I really do have a hard time believing that this is actually then going to happen. And it's basically the same concept, and that just popped up to my mind, such as girls always being, well, not all girls, but some girls, especially Gen Pop, who are starting with lifting, being afraid that all of a sudden they are getting bulky. It's the same with the midsection when you're training that directly. It's not that you're going to train that and all of a sudden, holy shit, fuck, now I'm just like super blocky there and it got super wide without me noticing it. You could always taper it down if you're realizing that it reacts nicely to your resistance training and you have the feeling that it's getting wider and wider. This is also a reason why we are still taking girth measurements along the way. But yeah, once again, just to answer your question there, I don't think that it really does contribute to the circumference measurements like massively, but that is just like a pure assumption. But what are your thoughts on that one?
Yeah, mine are the same. Like I can see how it might increase the circumference slightly if the abs became thicker at the front, but my difficulty was understanding how does it impact kind of the front on width, like just side to side. How would that impact a V taper? Because if you're not training the obliques, or at least not directly, they're not going to grow much. Anyway, we have a good experiment because I've been fucking training this shit out of my abs for the last couple of years. So when I get lean, I might be fairly lean by the end of this year, we'll be able to see if it's done anything. And if it's done nothing, then I just wasted a good amount of time just curling my front down.
Mate, and we don't just have you, but me too, right? At the moment, I'm training them like 5 to 6 times per week as well. Yeah. And because I have the same issues such as you, that my abs are just like shitty, and thus I just ramped up the frequency, ramped up the volume just to see how they are reacting. And if it turns out, same as you, that in the end, I have a vascular midsection but no abs to show, then yeah, I'm probably not going to train them directly anymore, or at least distribute the energy I have available to other body parts who are just like responding a little bit better.
That's the thing for me. I would have preferred to have put everything, like it's like the old saying goes in contest prep, like no stone left unturned. That's kind of what I wanted this off season to be, so I can then learn what I need to not worry about. Potentially, I don't need to do the abs because if I've invested that much and they haven't grown, likewise for you, then it's a case of, at least there was like the silver lining is I know I'm skipping these and I can be happy about that and not guilty because it's not doing anything for me.
Exactly. And I mean, then you could always bring up the argument of like, okay, I don't want my midsection to be blocky, that's why I'm not training them. And everyone would be fine with that. Yeah. All right. Yeah, he's a bodybuilder. He wants to have a V taper, so he's not training them directly. Can totally see that, right? Whereas other body parts, it's just like, okay, so you're not training your delts directly, but you want to have like football shoulders. Yeah, I don't think it's going to happen, right? So,
and we may end up, if it is a myth, that it really thickens I can see the front to, like, people know what I'm saying. We might perpetuate the myth, but anyway, it might not be a myth. So that's what I wanted to ask you, and you have the same thoughts as me, which is...
It's funny because people always think, right, that we always align with what our guests are saying, the guests we bring on our podcast. So recently we just had Aaron Horschig on, and there have been a lot of things that I'm not on board with the things he's saying, he's promoting, stuff like that. But he had still some interesting thoughts, and especially like people have been requesting that guy, that was not kind. People have requested Aaron to come on, and why not? I mean, every single time we bring someone on, it also gives us the opportunity to think about our methodologies, our beliefs, etc., and to think about whether we align or are on board with their commentary or the things they are saying. And we have Mike on like constantly, right? And we had James on a couple of times, had the seminars with them, and there are still plenty of things I don't really agree with them on or are absolutely on board with. And this is one of them. Or at least I have my doubts. Let's put it that way. I have my doubts because there's not enough evidence to suggest it's either this or that way, right? And that's why, just from a thinking perspective and going through a logical sense, for me at least, the argumentation doesn't really hold true for me that much.
Yeah, I think that's really good that you explained that. I don't know. Obviously, we kind of look at our guests and we don't just pick random people to come on. No. Like, it's not like we're inviting like David Lustig on or something and getting him to promote his propaganda, I guess. We're being selective. But everyone we bring on has something good to say. It doesn't mean we agree with every little last thing that they say. Just like me and Pascal might not agree with everything that each other say and do. Just our overall philosophies do agree. We're all looking for the same sort of result. We don't have any dogma that we're trying to promote.
Funny enough, I just recently had a client asking about mini cuts and whether a 2-week or 3-week mini cut is justified, because they've seen you do it, right? And I basically
3
said
is my minimum.
And I basically said like, okay, I don't think that 3 should be the minimum, but this is where we differ in our opinion on mini cuts as well. I think, and I know that you are like saying, okay, 3 to 6 weeks, whereas I'm saying like 4 to maximum 8 weeks. Like 4 is the minimum for me, whereas 8 is kind of like the true maximum where you don't want to go too often, and definitely not often for many people. So 6 is more the sweet spot for me personally. But once again, I just wanted to bring it up to show that even in such a simplistic thing, there are differences in what we deem as correct or not.
Yeah. Sweet.
So Steve, by the way, because now I've been talking again so long and so much, and I always feel bad. No, I don't. I actually enjoy that. No, but how was your week? Right, the people also want to know about that.
This is the Pascal show. It's fine. I'm used to being the interviewer.
Yeah, I mean, you have your own podcast show and you do regular Instagram stories, which I don't. So basically,
this is your time
from a relative. Yeah, exactly. From a relative time on the interwebs. That is my time. I can do that.
So my week, it's crushing slightly. I'm getting many of the symptoms that I probably would typically get in an overreaching week, but not quite. So I think I have a 5th week in me. I say I think. I will push for a 5th week, and I think it will be productive, but not as productive as it could be. And I think it's just me getting used to this new split. It's just kind of all hit me quite rapidly. The last, even in week 2, I was like, week 3, sorry. I was feeling like, ooh, this feels like a week 4. So this week feels like a week, nearly an overreaching week, but not quite. Like on some movements, I think next week I'll end up repeating performance, which I'm not too worried about. There's still a load of fatigue, so it's somewhat of an improvement on the week prior. But for some movements, I will be able to increase performance and get a little bit more volume out. But I'm just being careful, especially this back half of this microcycle. I'm not being as assertive as I was the front half because I can just feel it all kind of piling up. I'm impressed and surprised with my lower back. It's like the fact that I'm squatting, I don't know, I did 9 sets this week and I'll have 6 sets of straight leg deadlifts. I had a bent over row. And I did 4 sets of that today, and it's fine. Like my lower back actually feels okay today. I'm just surprised. I'm excited to see how much bigger it could potentially look when I lean. I'm excited generally to lean down to see how much I've actually improved.
Have you ever experienced any kind of lower back pain?
Only tiredness, no pain.
Yeah, because it's funny. I have the feeling that either you're someone who's susceptible to that and has experienced lower back pain at some point in your life, or you're just someone who can go through just like everything and nothing is happening. And same as you, man, I was deadlifting, squatting like frequently, like 4 days a week. When I was still doing powerlifting and stuff like that. And sometimes my technique now when I'm looking back was just like, oh shit, and this is like 7 sets of deadlift with triples, heavy weight with that, a little bit of rounding and stuff like that. It was just like, I took my lower back through a lot. And there was not one single time where I was just like worried or concerned that anything is about to happen. There were already other body parts who were causing me some issues, but never, not even in the slightest form, the lower back.
Yeah, I think for me, part of my issue generally is I have big joints, so I have big ankles. I look at my ankles sometimes and I'm just like, Steve, your ankles are fucking ridiculous. Like, they're so thick. It's just...
So you should have actually become a powerlifter.
So yeah, like big hips, big ankles, big wrists. But that means that I don't often get like niggles, which is great. This first time this week, I've just experienced like, like when doing bicep curls, you come right down to the bottom. Just in there, I felt like a small pain. I was like, I need to be careful. And obviously I'm doing quite a lot of bicep work at the moment. But apart from that, like it's pretty good. I can take quite a beating, which is nice. In some ways. Something I've definitely learned though is I don't know what it was that made me do this. I think it just looked nice to have like just squats on 2 days and like leg press. It's like really, if I'm going to go over like 5 sets on a movement or a muscle group in a session, I probably need 2 movements to allow volume to trickle up. Because it's beating the shit out of me having to do so many sets of squats. Like my quads can recover, but systemically it's taking a lot out of me. So next mesocycle, I'll definitely put in some non-axial loading movements in addition to the squatting. Probably on my hamstring, one of my hamstring days, I might have a straight leg deadlift and a hamstring curl just to allow things to be a bit easier in that regard. But overall, pretty happy with how everything's going. Hit 197 pounds this morning. So I'm on track for 200. I think I probably will end up hitting 200 if I keep up at the pace of like half a pound to a pound a week.
Finally, the trend is working. I was a little bit concerned that it was bunkier that you're having, but it seems like it's working now.
Oh dear. It's all the hot cross buns and trend.
Yeah, exactly. Best combination, eh? No, it sounds great. And I can totally attest to just going above a certain set range or set numbers, just like devastating and also often not really qualitative. I can't even fathom how I did it in the past, probably because I was just weak as fuck, and also at the same time, wasn't really training properly, right? I don't know, like 2.5 years ago, I did sessions where I did like 7 sets per exercise, and it was just like, give me 3 now, or 4, and I'm already starting to die in this session. And
yeah, for my straight leg deadlifts where I'm training in like the 5 to 10 repetition range, I can't do more than 3 sets. Whereas in the 10, I'm really enjoying the 10 to 15 repetition range for those. I think I can get out 4 in my final week. So that's cool. But yeah, it's funny you talk about it, when you're weaker, like in my contest prep, I was looking at some of my old spreadsheets. I was like, how the fuck was I doing like that many sets of like deadlifts into Romanian deadlifts? And I was just like, I did like 15 sets of deadlifts in that session. No, not 15. That would be nuts. But it was like 10 sets of deadlifts. I was like, how was I doing that? It's just,
which is already just like insane.
Yeah. I think in prep, I think you just get so weak and you just get so like unable to perform really, really hard. Maybe, I don't know. Yeah. Should we get to questions now?
Let's do it.
Sweet. Oh, actually, I do want to say one thing because this changed big time this week for me. I told Pascal, and this is like, I don't know, maybe some people want to block their ears. So digestion in off season sometimes isn't the best. I'd had issues every morning and I was just being a twat basically and just eating the same breakfast and not really changing it. I kind of changed it a few times, but not properly, like big time changed it. Essentially what I found is I can't digest a ton of oats in the morning. I end up it all just comes back out of me basically.
Which is so sad.
It's not fun. It's not fun at all.
Oats are so good. And especially like when I got to know you, even before I knew you personally. I knew you were the guy for what was it called again? The oats
Cocoa oats.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, it's sad. It's an end of an era.
But I feel so much better. Jesus, I feel so much better having I actually can get away with an oat-based cereal. So I have like oat flakes. So I still get my oat dose somehow, and that sits with me, and I don't end up just being in trouble. So that took me my entire off season basically to realize I don't think it's
crazy.
Quite. I think my oats portion, once it breached like I don't know 80 grams, that's when it started causing me issues. But I don't know what I had in my head and why I thought it was fine just to keep going. I think I was a bit stuck in like you get stuck in your ways, like doing a squat. I was stuck in my ways thinking I needed oats for breakfast.
I mean, this is something that so often happens, I think, in our realm, especially also with exercises or so, that we are just so stubborn changing things up because we have the feeling, no, I need to do it. I need to do it because this is what, I don't know, gives me all the gains, right? Until you then change it finally, and you realize that you're so much better off.
So I just wanted to flag that up for people because I'm sure there's people thinking, and I feel like an idiot saying it. Like I'm a coach, I should know better than to just keep eating something that obviously disagrees with me. But it was just, I was very much in routine, set in my ways. So if anything's causing you a trouble and you're noticing that, just don't be afraid to just change it. Like, I think it was in my head that I'm eating so much cereal and bread right now. It's just all I can stomach. Anything else is just too much.
I don't know what it is. Now that you bring it up, like I always love bread. I mean, I'm a German guy, so bread is just like the thing. And we have amazing bread. It's not like that. So I was once living in Neukölln, which is a part of Berlin, which is known for Turkish people living there. So I don't know if you're aware, but Berlin is the second largest Turkish city in the world.
Okay.
So even if it's not in the Turkey. So most of them are located in Kreuzberg, Moabit, and Neukölln. And there were, of course, a lot of bakeries from Turkey or the Lebanon and stuff like that. And they always had like that these super big breads, like white bread though. And when you bought them, they were a huge disappointment because you could actually take that entire bread, which was like, I don't know, 45 centimeters or so, if not even longer. You can just take it and squeeze it together to that small, tiny bun. Huge disappointment. German bread, however, is not that way. It is like, dense. I don't know. It is dense. It is really, really dense. And like recently, Katie started to buy like really good bread from a bakery just around the corner. I was just having that because, as you guys know, I'm not eating potatoes at the moment anymore. So I needed to actually substitute with a different carb source, which is not cereals because obviously I can't eat cereals all day. Okay, who am I kidding? I could do that, but it's not possible because I have a 2.5-year-old son at home, so I can't eat cereal all day. So I substituted to bread, and it's just so good. Bread, if it's well done, if it's fresh, it's just like, holy shit, it's good.
Agreed. My diet consists of lots of cereal, hot crust buns, and bagels at the moment.
Yeah.
I can't even be bothered to like cook rice. I'm just going to eat a bagel, 2 bagels. That's fine.
And I even have a rice cooker at home. So this is just how good the bread is that I can't even be bothered to put on the rice cooker, which is the most convenient thing to do. Just put in water there, put the button down, and then that's basically it. Of course, put the rice in, but then put the button down, and that's it. Wait 20 minutes, and it's finished.
20 minutes though, fuck that.
Yeah, it was a cheap rice cooker, so I don't know if more expensive ones are better and faster. I don't know.
My rice takes like 15 minutes, just white rice. It's just like, oh, come on, I just want to eat this now. So
yeah,
I know we've gone on for ages now, but it's really nice because this is the only off season I've had the experience where like I'm excited to diet. Not very often do I normally get that. It's kind of like, oh, it's time to diet because I'm a little bit chubby, or I'm not even that chubby and I just need to diet. Whereas now I'm like, yeah, I get to diet and I can like have oats and I can like, because it's a small portion and I can like be clever about, I don't know, having certain veggies at certain times and my gut's not always bloated. And so like, it's funny.
Me too. And this is something I recorded for you that one day, where then realized that I didn't record it as a voice message. Then I couldn't be bothered to re-record it. So this is something I wanted to talk about, or did talk about there as well, that I'm slowly, and this is something I also mentioned like last week, just really shortly, that I'm slowly being at a point where I'm just like, hey, I am kind of ready for dieting, but I know I still have 6 months to go before I'm actually dieting. And if I'm already ready now, just imagine how I will feel in 6 months. This is exactly where you want to position yourself before you're doing something like that, right? Just be in such a well-fed state that it's just like, okay, I need to diet now, because I'm just like, I don't want to eat that much anymore and stuff.
Yeah, this is chat for another time, but it's sometimes I quite often use a single primer phase between longer diets for clients. And there's definitely some clients that need 2 back-to-back. They can't get away with a single primer phase. They actually need like 8 weeks, because like you said, to get to that point, for some people it just takes a long time. Unfortunately, some people I have, and they know that if they listen to this, they're in prep and they don't have the time to commit to such a, and that's why time is so helpful, and being able to eat up a bit so you feel more normalized coming into a diet. But we should probably get to questions.
Yeah,
we've almost gone for the whole podcast.
Each and every single week, we are ending up at the same position or dilemma of us complaining about how that we can't catch up with all of the questions that are there. And then we are ending up with only answering like 2 or 3.
I know. It's a good problem to have. So apologies, guys.
I'm really looking forward how you will pronounce that last name that is now coming up.
Oh,
gosh.
So we have a question from Calvin H. I would just call him Hoyn. Calvin Hoyn, maybe.
Probably it's pronounced absolutely differently than what we are assuming here.
Sorry, Calvin. So we'll get to your question. When eating in a surplus, does the carb to fat ratio affect body composition? ?
I think we talked about it like last week, didn't we? Where I brought it up that now I started with a lot of clients to do just like give them a range, or a really wide range, or just let them go by feel, because I don't think that the carb ratio to fat ratio, unless you're going super high in fat or super low in carbs, that this is any of a concern in the off season or at maintenance.
Yeah, I checked last week's episode, and then also potentially, I think we had Broderick on twice talking about high carbohydrate diets, which might give him a few more things to think about. And also we asked Eric Helms this on a Q&A. So if you want to fish that one out, you'll probably find that too. So next question is from our man, Jacob Wren. And he has asked tips for starting a podcast, starting solo and asking for guests later, ? Love the podcast and all of your other content. Smiley.
Go ahead, Steve, if you want to.
So I would say my biggest tips would be either do it better or do it differently. Those would be my 2 biggest tips. So if you don't feel like you can do what someone else already does better, then I wouldn't add to already what would be a really kind of oversaturated number of podcasts. And if you can do it differently, then do it differently. If you can't do it better.
Funny, because I didn't expect an answer like this coming from you.
Really?
I really thought that you were going to say like, okay, this is how I started and stuff like that. But this is basically what I wanted to say kind of as well. I wanted to say like, okay, first and foremost, sit down and think about whether you want to do it for the next year or 2 or 3. If the answer is no, just don't do it, right? And then the next question is like, okay, can you do it differently, or can you do it better than someone else? And if you wholeheartedly, or in all honesty, can say that you do, then sure thing, go ahead. If not, don't even bother doing it. I mean, it's oversaturated, and probably if you aren't consistent, if you can't bring out a better quality than others or so, or add something that is different, your time is probably better spent elsewhere.
I'd also say, like you said there, consistency, super important. And then making sure and you're good at this, talking about this, Pascal, is making sure it's a skill set you have. If you're a good interviewer, you're good on camera, you're good speaking. Not that I necessarily think I really am, but I've definitely improved to a point where I think I'm pretty decent now. If you're not particularly good at that, then maybe do writing and then improve on that. I started with blog writing initially. So that's some further advice. But yeah. Next question. Maybe we can kill
we're
off
on a roll.
We've done 2.
Yeah.
So we have a question from Dully. What a brilliant name. How much more of a benefit does counting macros have as opposed to calories and protein? How much more of a benefit for bulking, and how about for cutting?
I think this ties into the question we just answered, and we answered like last week. Because last week, I think that there was someone who was asking the question about what's the benefit of tracking all macros in comparison to going by calories and protein only, right? So, yeah, check that one out.
Yeah, I'd only say the benefit, I'd say until there's a problem, really, because you could quite easily cut without having to track all of them.
Yeah.
And you probably have good habits in place.
I mean, and for cutting, you could always make the argument of like, okay, when you are in a depleted state, the carbohydrate timing of your meals becomes a little bit more important. However, you may be someone who doesn't experience any kind of negative outcomes with just eating whenever it fits you. And if it does, if you feel like your performance is going down on a cutting phase, play around with the carbohydrate timing a little bit. But other than that.
Yeah. And I guess it probably increases in importance or how much it helps. The more extreme the goal and the deeper you are into a diet or the leaner you are. Related to your point of carb being depleted and things like this. So Hector has a question. When auto-regulating rest between sets for hypertrophy goals, is it always a guessing game, or should it always be a little less or more than 3 minutes on compound movements?
So I think that Z, we bring him up all the time. He basically was telling me at some point that he's resting up to 10 minutes.
What, 10 minutes?
Where
Jeez.
I'm then saying like, okay,
he's having a mother's meeting. Sorry.
It's your time in the gym. If you like to be in the gym, etc., it's of course fine if you want to do it. But it is time being in a stressful environment, and it is time being taken away from your rest at the end of the gym session, right? So if you could wrap up the training session with the same performance in 1 hour, why are you then doing it for 2 or 3 hours, right? It's just taking away from your recovery capabilities and just recovery in general, right? So then it was just like the question, okay, how long should I rest? From the scientific literature, and we know that somewhere around 2 to 3 minutes is probably better than shorter rest times, but it's always context dependent. If you're doing like metabolite work, resting shorter times or having more like single joint movements, resting something like 1 minute up to 2 minutes is absolutely fine. Compound lifts, I would always like suggest 2 to 3 minutes in general. However, some people with certain movements just need more time to recover from those. Like, let's say you're doing like heavy deadlifts still for hypertrophy. Possibly you could actually end up like resting 5 minutes. Everything above that, I would think that it's too systemically fatiguing, or you're causing too much systemic fatigue, and you're not a strength athlete anymore. You don't want to rest up to 5 to 10 minutes just to match the performance again. You want to actually get the work done also in a somewhat reasonable time. And thus, I would always like aim to, on average, 2 to 3 minutes. I think that's a really, really good starting point. And if you need to rest longer, maybe also consider the exercise selection, or trying to improve your work capacity, or reconsider just the entire approach. Because to be really honest, I think everything above like 3 to 4, maximum up to 5 minutes, above that for hypertrophy is probably just too long of rest time, and I would really reconsider my approach to the entire thing.
Yeah, it brings up the stimulus to time ratio, which Mike and James have talked about a little bit, and I think actually I need to do a graphic on that one as well, because I did one on the stimulus to fatigue ratio, but the stimulus to time ratio is a great one. It's like like an example could be like a barbell row. Maybe you need 2 sets to get equal stimulus to like 5 sets on a cable row. Similarly, you could have a bad stimulus to time ratio. You probably have a terrible fatigue to stimulus ratio as well if it's a move that you need like 5, 6, 7 minutes rest. So it brings up a really valid point when we know for hypertrophy how important volume is. But yeah, my rule of thumb is very similar. Like metabolite work, you might restrict rest times. Everything else, up to like having basically when you feel good and ready to go again, heart rate's down, breathing's back to normal.
Yeah.
But sometimes I've been in a position where I've left it too long, and then you kind of almost feel out of the groove. And sometimes when I just actually need to catch myself, I'm like, actually, like my breath's pretty much back, my heart rate's pretty much back. Let's just go again. And I find that to be better than like just letting time go and like giving yourself all the time in the world.
Also, by the way, this is something that you now brought up with the time to stimulus ratio, which also ties into that. If you need to rest like 5 minutes, then you always, I mean, I have a hard time not to assume that this is then causing a lot of systemic fatigue. If you need like 5 minutes just to catch your breath again and all that kind of stuff, like, wow, this is probably causing a lot of systemic fatigue and overall local fatigue probably as well. And then we are back to the stimulus to fatigue ratio, right? Couldn't you do for the same amount of time more volume with less systemic fatigue, etc., etc.? So yeah, if you have to rest long, I have a hard time not to believe that it's causing a lot of systemic fatigue, which is then probably also showing itself in the next training workouts or for the rest of the week. So yeah,
this is a discussion point for you, Pascal. I think this would be interesting for everyone else as well, and I want to bring it up in regards to one of the issues I see with people who may be trained to failure, like each week or very close to. I found myself doing this at times where I've probably over pushed my reps in reserve, whereby maybe you hit failure or you hit a failure point and then you take like breathers and you just each week you just add another breather and add another breather and you keep hitting failure every time. Like systemically, I can remember how much that wrecked me. Whereas now I've been way more strict with my like breaths between sets, and it's so much better. I don't feel so wrecked, and I get way more effective work done. Is that something I just see it? I see it sometimes with people posting and myself.
I always did it like, so I did a combination of both. In the past, more so with pushing to failure or taking breathers. Now it's more like just racking the bar. I take a little bit of rest and go for another set, even though that my set numbers didn't call for that. So I had it like yesterday. I had chest workout, was my last push workout for week 4, had my incline presses, and I did like repetition range 8 to 10, had 4 sets prescribed. And then on the last set, because the first 2 sets went really well, maybe I even pushed a little bit beyond what I was capable of, or I caused so much fatigue, which wasn't really showing in that single set, but then already in set 3, my performance just like blew. And I was just like, whoa, where did that come from? Didn't really feel like it, right? Then I only hit like 7 reps, so I was already out of my repetition range, but didn't really push to failure. It was just like, okay, I need to hit those four sets, so I rather stay 1 away or 2 away from failure, because otherwise set number 4 will even tank more, and I wouldn't even be able to hit my overall volume that I set for as a target for myself. So set number 3 was then 7 reps instead of a rep range of 8 to 10. And then set number 4 was only 5 repetition. So you can see that my performance actually went down quite massively. But once again, I stayed shy away from failure so that I could add a 5th set to get into my overall rep range, because you can do the math on the spot, right? So you could actually do like 4 times 8, 4 times 10, and then pick the overall repetition range that you aimed for the entire session for that exercise, for example, right? So in that case, 32 to 40 reps for that single session. So what did I do? Kept some repetitions in reserve for a 5th set, even though it wasn't prescribed. And then I did 5 repetitions to get into the overall rep range or rep target I set for myself, to ensure that I'm ticking the box of overall volume instead of ticking the box of intensity.
Cool. Awesome. Should we get to another question? We probably have time for another one. Oh yeah, we definitely do. So forever folked. So for those of you who don't know that nomenclature, fat bulking. Folked. What advice do you have for someone who has to mass longer than desired? I would like to mini cut, but due to travel, stress, young children, I know I cannot handle a mini cut right now. So I guess I will just keep massing. Next bodybuilding show is over 1 year away. Thanks. Ooh, one thing massively springs to mind.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially like it's perfect timing because we will be releasing, or we have released yesterday, our new ebook. That is the primer phase. And the primer phase is all about priming yourself for the next block to come. And that is also a different term for a maintenance period. So you don't always have to go through bulking or cutting cycles. You can actually take maintenance phases. And I would even say that they are so beneficial, and why we think they are so beneficial, you can actually read in the ebook. But no, just to bring a different perspective on things, there's even the theory of hardening your newly gained muscle mass, right? And I think Jared even talked about it once, right? Where he gained, and instead of continuing gaining, where you are more likely to then also gain some fluff along the way, he went back to maintenance to then make the muscle stick around. I know it sounds really bro-ish, but I do believe that there is something to it, because newly built muscle will stick around and hang around for longer if you keep it for longer. So if you are gaining and then go straight into cutting, straight into gaining, this is also the reason why I don't think that short gaining and cutting cycles work. Like back to back, let's say like you're doing 4 weeks of gaining followed by 1 week of a cut. I don't think it works, because muscle builds so slowly, you will never go into the momentum. And that newly gained muscle hasn't had the time to stick around, has probably lost along the way. Now that I'm saying it out loud, it sounds really bro-ish, and I don't know how much there is behind that. But that is just an assumption and a theory many people have, and I'm one of them.
I mean, this question couldn't have been better, could it? It's our sales pitch totally. At the end for the primer phase.
Absolutely.
I just want to say, guys, I'm incredibly proud of what we've put together in that book. Just to see it all there, and Pascal's packaged it up to look fantastic, and there's some really fresh looking graphs in there. It's not a heavy read. It's like 25 pages or something for you guys to dig into. So I'm really excited for people to read that, review it, and to release it, because I don't know, it's an exciting thing to have like a piece of literature like properly published that I'm very proud about. So, and that hopefully there's more in future. But yeah, to kind of talk about Pascal's point, the hardening phase, the first time I'd ever heard that was like in the bro side. But then I heard Lyle McDonald talk about hardening phases.
Oh, really?
And he kind of felt like it
aware of that.
Yeah, I think it's on his page somewhere on his website, where he kind of thought there's something to it. And now it's been more, I guess, made evidence-based, or like there's some scientific kind of theory behind it in like settling points, in that we have like body fat set points. There's probably muscular set points as well. And so by, like Pascal said, you hold on to it and you won't lose it immediately. Just like if you kind of hold a leaner physique, you're less likely to just like put all the fat back on, because the body wants to get back to homeostasis. And this is one of the huge benefits of primer phases, is that you kind of let things, you actually go for homeostasis, which your body wants. You get a new set point, so then you can make further adaptations in future from this new primed position, which is why we call it the primer phase.
No, absolutely. And by the way, just want to talk about the ebook as well, because we recently talked about like literature and reading and trying to educate ourselves, and we decided to bring out like smaller books. And this is only the beginning. This is only one of many books to come, that are more chunked or small little pieces to digest, instead of like a huge book. Because I know myself that sometimes it can be quite overwhelming, even though that it's chunked up into chapters, right? It's still one book that you want to read in one go. And what we thought of doing is now taking these chapters and splitting them up in books, because they are delivering all the information around one subject that they need. And for you guys, you can digest it a little bit easier. And this is what we now started with the primer phase. Once again, this is only the first one of many to come. And I hope that you are enjoying that. And also, I hope that it helps people realizing how much of a benefit a primer phase can be, and a maintenance phase in general can be, to set yourself up for further success in the future. Because we've seen it over and over again. It's only started as a hypothesis, and it still is only a hypothesis, right? We don't really see anything in the literature that kind of supports that. It's more based just on a hypothesis, and we've seen it though with a lot of our clients and with ourselves, that it just helps tremendously. And I've seen or heard also like great feedback from many clients who were just coming out of a primer phase, going straight into the next gaining phase, and be like, holy shit, I feel kind of like a new lifter. And it's just crazy what like a lowerish kind of volume now finally does again for me.
Yeah, the way I describe it is a deload on steroids. Everyone knows how good they feel after a deload. This is like, this is a big time. So, and whilst, like you said, this never is going to be specifically studied properly, because it's just not like, no one's got time to study such a thing. But there's so many papers surrounding it, or so much evidence surrounding like holding lower body fat levels and diet fatigue and fatigue that builds up from training, and all the anecdotes that we're like very confident to say that this is going to be potentially a real lifesaver for a lot of people. So and I imagine, Pascal, there's probably going to be a sale on initially, like early bird. I imagine we'll have a little bit of money off.
For the first 2 weeks, it is being sold for $14.99, and then after that, it is being ramped up to $19.99, which is, in my opinion, the exact same thing what you get for other ebooks, or the kind of a similar price to other ebooks with the same length. But at the same time, the other ebooks don't look as good as this one. So yeah,
if you do pick it up, we'd love you to take a screenshot, tag us, share something that you've enjoyed out of it, comment below. It would mean a lot to us.
Yeah, just don't share the entire thing on social media.
Don't do that. And, otherwise, we'll crucify you.
It's crazy because
we'll set Mike on
just something on the side here. I can't really say that I haven't been into piracy. So I'm not speaking being on a ship and then having a parrot on your shoulder or so. I'm speaking about like digital piracy. I think that our generation is the one who is really known for that. Like back in the days when there were downloading streams such as Emule or BitTorrent and all that kind of stuff. So the classical things. So definitely had something to do with that as well. And this changed, of course, with something like streaming services. It changed massively when it comes to like piracy. However, see it unfortunately all the time from colleagues in the field who bring out an ebook, and that is then being shared on, I don't know, Reddit or 4chans or so, which is, I never really thought about it in the past, even though that I was a musician, and I never really thought about it that massively, how much of an impact this can have. But I've seen it and heard it from someone like Scott Stevenson, for example, that someone reached out to him, like saying, hey, okay, I have a question about the ebook. And he then basically said like, yeah, okay, you can ask that question on the forum. And it turned out that he has gotten that ebook over 4chan, and that's why he didn't have access to the forum, right? And he still had, the courtesy to actually reach out to Scott Stevenson and be like, yeah, I have a stolen ebook from you. Of course, I wasn't the one who put it online, but I just downloaded it, right? And we are not rich guys, and someone like Scott Stevenson isn't, someone like the guys from the Muscle and Strength Pyramids on, the guys from Renaissance Periodization on, right? And it is actually content that is being put out there to help people, right? And these are ebooks that aren't being sold in like millions of copies. It's just like our small niche. And thus, being shared around, we aren't really impacted by that, and I hope that it's not going to be massive in the future, but it's just like sad to see. And I just realized that once I heard that story about Scott Stevenson and saw something like that, that a small guy who's putting so much work and effort into one ebook, I think his ebooks are even like 100 pages, if not even longer, a lot of work and time has gone into that, and then just someone stealing it, putting it online for others to then get for free. It's just like, come on, come on. Just pay those $20 and support these guys. I mean, otherwise they will die out and they can't produce something like that at all anymore at some point, right? And yeah, it was just sad to see something like that happening. And once again, I don't blame the people who are downloading it, because often you don't do it with the intention of harming someone. You just see the button and be like, yeah, cool, free copy. No question about what I'm going to do now, right? So I don't really blame them, because I was there myself. But when you really sit down, take a moment to think about what this is actually causing for the author, and all the work and effort he put into that, and not getting anything out of it, is just like, mate, come on, he's making that possibly for a living, or to have a somewhat decent life, to survive, stuff like that, and you're taking that away from him because you are not willing to pay like $10-$20 or so, if not even more, in a piece like the muscle and strength pyramid. Is invaluable.
And you won't even get the value from it, because you won't have invested in it. Just like if you were to coach someone for free, they're probably not going to really follow what you're saying necessarily, because you haven't invested in it. So it's not even worth it from the perspective of downloading it for free. You won't have invested the same kind of worth in it. And thankfully, we have a lot of supporters, but just like Scott Stevenson, he puts out loads of free content. It's just really a way of showing that you support that individual in some ways. Not that we're saying you guys need to purchase it to support us. Just listening to this is enough.
But this is the same with points. Yeah, this is the same with something like Patreon, right? People are willing just to give a monetary appreciation to someone just for the work and effort they're putting out, or even just for the person they are, right? And I think that this is how it should be, right? The support and appreciation that form, and it's the same when it comes to work that you have done. You're sitting at the office, right? You're working, and you gaining money at the end of the month is just an appreciation of all the educational background that you're having and all the work that you're putting in right now, right? And think about that. I mean, it's kind of the same thing. It's a form of appreciation, while at the same time it's a compensation for the time that hasn't been invested into that as well.
I wonder if we ever think about having like an exclusive Facebook group for people who have bought our ebooks. I wonder if that might be something valuable in future. So that's something to think about. It's more work for us, but it might be something cool. I don't know.
Maybe something else.
Yeah, maybe something else. True. So guys, we have kept you long enough. Hopefully we've sold the primer phase enough to you, and you're going to go pick it up now. Thank you very much for listening as always.
Cheers, guys.